Hello, my name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk to you about astrology, in particular Vedic astrology, and how it connects with your daily lives. Uh, I'm also here. This is a second attempt at a recording. Hopefully, this one will work properly. And we'll talk about the upcoming or the current changes astrologically. There have been some really significant ones. We'll also talk a little bit in advance about the eclipses in May and try to give you an idea of what kind of astrological weather you'll be experiencing over the next few weeks. The so um, My name is Gary Gomes. I've been a Vedic astrologer for over 30 years. Uh, I've been in astrology. I've been interested in astrology since I was around 9 or 10 years old. Had a couple of false starts, and then when I discovered Vedic astrology, that sort of clicked with me right away, and I became interested in it. I wanted to learn it right away. And about a year after I went to work, um, courses were offered close by in Cambridge, Mass, as a matter of fact. And I also wanted to commemorate the people who introduced me to Vedic astrology, mainly the TM people, Transcendental Meditation people, um, Temple of Kriya Yoga people, but also um, independent authors and founders of the movement in the United States and in India. Um, and I use the United States first because those were the first authors I was introduced to. So those would be people like James Braha and Nalini Kantadas, Rick Hauk, who was essentially pivotal in getting me involved in Vedic astrology on a larger, more international scale. And other folks like Dennis Flaherty from the American Council of Vedic Astrology, Dennis Harness, and a variety of people, and and especially my good friend Ken Lay, who's also a priest of the Kriya Yoga lineage, and my good friend Tom Carr. So those are just some of the folks, and of course my wife who supported this endeavor through the years. I actually met my wife through astrology, so there's a lot of uh, there's a lot of connectedness with astrology and the person I am today. I still retain parts of the old person. You never totally discard who you are or how you grew up, and my attitudes are still largely the same. But you know, that's your karma. That's what you were born in the world with, and you can either as the clay you're given, you can twist that clay a certain way and come out with something nice and beautiful, or twist it another way and come out with something that's a little bit warped and unusual. And I like to think I've done a little bit of both. Uh, and again, I like to remember my students like Shania Devi Hossman in Turkey, and Anna Abud in Texas, and Brianna Keith in Massachusetts here, and Fred Bong in Rhode Island. Again, whoever I've forgotten, my good friend Ken Miller, who served as president of Kepler College for a short while, for a time. And it's just essentially a lot of people who encouraged me and supported me along the way. I am um, a Swami of the Temple of Kriya Yoga, as I may have mentioned before. I'm a Reiki master. I know a little bit about Western magic uh, or occult traditions. It doesn't mean that I do hexes or anything like that. I don't do that. But I know a little bit about a few things like tarot and numerology, and I actually explored tarot and numerology before I explored astrology. Um, but or at least before I studied it. But like a lot of people, I got exposed to it through Linda Goodman's sun signs and to friends who are into it, and also friends who are into palmistry. And so you pick up a lot of things through the years before I studied formally with people like TTM people or with K and Rao, or with a variety of other people like I consider an indirect guru, C.S. Patel, who I just thought was brilliant. So I'll cut it off at that. We are going to have new delivery systems for this probably within about 2 months. And when I say new delivery systems, we'll have a better screen presentation. We'll have more reliable software. I still don't know if the opening appeared on the screen, and I won't know until the tape is done, until the recording is done. So I hope it does. But Zoom is great, but it's unreliable for screen share functions. So that's why I'm doing a little bit of a buffer when I record, so that you can at least see that it's me and not somebody else. So so I'm trying to get those to work consistently. They work when they want to work, and that's why I'm doing the second recording this week, mainly because some of the charts that I want to put up didn't show properly when I first put them up. So that having been said, I will have a music channel coming. I will have maybe even some performances of music for your listening pleasure, and also some discussion of music, and essentially we'll get into some harmonic theory stuff and some lesser known systems of music. I hope to have some guests on. I am still hoping to continue my policy of having guests on this particular channel. It's just been a scheduling nightmare for me recently. And hopefully a lot of that stuff will be gone by May. So that's where we stand. Please subscribe to the page if you would be so kind. I'd really appreciate it. I am trying to build a subscriber base. And so that's so we can get better equipment, better access to you. And also, I'm hoping to start utilizing cable TV studios again, which I haven't been able to for, first of all, due to COVID, but secondly, because of personal responsibilities I have, which don't allow me to be absent that much. And like I said, hopefully within about 2 months, a lot of those things will be resolved, and we'll be back in a relatively steady state. But it's important to embrace change, not resist it. It's important to go with the flow, to try to get the best out of the current circumstances you're in. And I encourage you all to do that. These are challenging times astrologically. They're very challenging. And it's up to us to really try to make the best of them. So that particular lecture aside, but because, we're all born with the same basic equipment, some of us have different advantages in life, obviously. So some people are born with gifts. Some people, and the gifts may be intellect, talent. They may be rich parents. They may be a supportive household, but you can essentially you're put into this world. This is just my little lecture, and you're given these obstacles to sort of polish the gem. They're not put there to give you a life of misery. That's one thing that's important to keep in mind. they're put there to help polish the gem. So you need some kind of a abrasive to polish something, right? So essentially, the abrasives are their raw material. A car doesn't. A car isn't. I just came up with a car as an example. If you ever see a gemstone in its natural state, it doesn't look like much of anything. It's essentially it's a piece of rock, right? You have to polish it and refine it and cut it in order to turn it into a thing of beauty with all the refractive surfaces and things like that. Even cabochons, they're little rounded stones. Those have to be shined and polished. So to expect us to come in and have the come into life and be this perfect stone, this perfectly cut stone, is kind of naive. And we continue learning until we die. We never stop learning. Um, I'm close to 70 now. I'm still learning new things every day. I'm still learning how stupid I am every day. So I think it's important to keep that in mind as you're going through the world and you're confronting problems and you're saying to yourself, I don't deserve this. This is really not what I was expected. I should have been farther along by this than this by now. Maybe it should have, maybe it shouldn't have. You don't know. And it's pointless beating yourself up over things you don't know or you can't change. The point is to try to change your life for the better starting now. Okay? All right. So that's some small encouragement for you. And I'm going to try to share the screen so we can get to the actual astrology. And I'll take that chart off because that's not the chart I want, but I'll also stop the share. And I'll go back to this again because this is where the computer gets temperamental. And that should be sharing. And we'll make it, let's see now, we'll give us a now chart. And I did this for those of you who saw the upload to YouTube the other day. I did this the other day. And we had a blank space where the chart should be. So let's go. This is, I'm going to change it to New Bedford, Mass. But never give up. To use the lines from Galaxy Quest, never give up, never surrender. It may sound silly and it's a goofy movie, but it's really true. All right, so what do we have here? We have a Vedic astrology chart. We have several significant transits which have occurred over the past week, and several significant transits which will occur within the next month, within the next few weeks. So the first significant transit we had, and I've already discussed this one several times before, is Rahu and Ketu. Now, one of the things that's important to remember about this transit is people who have sun signs or moon signs or rising signs in these particular signs in Aries and Libra will be strongly affected by this particular transit of Rahu and Ketu. They'll have a bunch of eclipses going through that sign before the end of the year, 4 eclipses in total. That's kind of rough. But eclipses are not only challenging, they're also mechanisms for growth. Okay. So a lot of places, and in general, in terms of mundane astrology, Libra is the marketplace, and Aries is essentially the head of state or the leader. So the throne sits over here in Leo. So that's Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and back to our friend Pisces. But Aries this is the place where the leader is exalted. Think of the president of the United States as being the commander in chief. Okay, so that means he's the commander in chief. He or she is the commander in chief of the army. Okay, this is really this is the seat of government. This is the active arm of government. So what that means in plain English is that active arms of governments will be very active. People will be dissatisfied with them. And this is consistent with what I said before. Now, keep something in mind. I'm not saying there'll be a revolution or a rebellion in every single country across the world, but we'll see more of them than we're used to. And that's mainly because of dissatisfaction with governments in general, not just here in the United States, but in general, there'll be dissatisfaction with governments. That peak or that crest will probably come close to the eclipse when the sun and Rahu are together in between April 15th and May 15th. Now that period is going to be a really important period to watch because we have the sun will be in the same sign with Rahu, and after the eclipse, and about 2 weeks later, there'll be a lot of activity in Libra. So that tends to mean Librans will have changes in their job structure. They'll have changes in who they report to. They'll have changes in relationship life. The same will be true of Aries. Okay, so both those signs will be hit really dominantly and pretty hard. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it'll be bad, but there'll be upsets or displacements. And this will also apply to partnerships. So certain partnerships we've been used to seeing for years will essentially dissolve in between April and May. And I'm wondering if the situation with Russia and the Ukraine will cause some dissolution or some kind of disruption between China and Russia or between NATO countries and the United States. So this is just speculation, but I think especially because partnerships will be changing or people will become dissatisfied with partnerships, there might be a move away from it, and there'll be more attention focused on leadership and what I would call nationalism as opposed to group activity, because Rahu being in Aries will tend to increase nationalism, not internationalism, but nationalism. The other thing that we have to look forward to is Jupiter will change signs around the end of April, and also Venus will change signs around the beginning of April. So, or actually Jupiter will change signs before that. So around April 14th, Jupiter will move into Pisces. And so there'll be a short span of time between April 1st and April 13th, in which Venus and Jupiter will be in the same sign in Aquarius. That'll mean sudden innovations or sudden increases in financial growth, and also, to a certain extent, new innovations, new technologies, new creative arts coming into being born. The other thing that'll happen is that we have a Saturn and Mars almost exact conjunction happening with it around April 6th. So that conjunction is kind of dangerous for the Earth. It'll be kind of dangerous for areas that are prone to earthquakes. So certain parts of the world like California, Turkey, Japan, and China uh, had better, and Eastern Europe may have more earthquakes than normal. We're going to look at the astrological maps to make sure that's where they're happening. I'm just remembering rising signs of countries off the top of my head. And also, so that's Saturn, Mars conjunction we're going to look for, but it's also going to be really kind of a stubborn conjunction because even if there's progress made in peace in the Ukraine or places like that, you'll start to see some kind of I was just trying to think of a good way to put it, a stubbornness on both parties to really want everything they want to have. So you want the Ukraine to, for Russia to unconditionally withdraw, or else they'll call their buddies in, and the Russians will say, no, we don't want to compromise. We want you to do X, Y, and Z right away. And by the way, give up. So I I'm thinking that this period roughly between April 6th and um, April 15th will be very critical, very difficult. And I would even extend it back to April 4th. And around the end of May, or around the beginning of May, or towards the beginning of May, when you start to have the eclipse cycles come in, there'll be a lot of, like I said, a lot of breakup of alliances. Now, these aren't necessarily bad things. I think you heard me say a while ago that I didn't think it was such a bad thing for England to get out of the European Union. And I'm not really a conservative. I'm not really any particular stripe a politician. But basically, I I I was looking at the European Union's chart, and the European Union's chart doesn't look so good over the next couple of years. England's doesn't look much better, but it looks a little bit looks just a little bit better than the EU's. And I think there's sometimes a break or a disruption, as long as it's not bellicose and as long as it's not intended to hurt anybody, uh, can be a good thing. But it's always unsettling. It always requires some kind of adjustment. So at least from this particular chart, this Rahu and K2 axis will be encouraging breakups or more solitary action. The one thing that'll save it, and it's not directly involved in that, is Saturn's aspecting um, this particular sign. So I'll make it a little bit rougher between the April 30th and roughly June. But Saturn will move back in early June into this sign. So it'll delay certain breakups until early next year, or certain changes, or even career changes for certain signs until next year. But you'll get a little bit of a taste of it. And I personally wouldn't recommend anybody, even countries, break up over the next few months or so. I would wait until everything is organized, understood, and then if they still feel they have to make a break, January of 2023, it looks like a better time to do it. But it's always considered to be, the United States in particular, is always considered to be a little bit wise to think about whether or not breaking a connection or a commitment would actually be a good thing for you. And I think that'll be like the biggest challenge for people to hang in there over the next year and a half. And I remember this particular transit in my case, and this was roughly 2003 to 2004 and a half, roughly speaking. And I can also remember this was consistent with the war in Iraq. And it was kind of interesting because we had a war that was arguably done for a good reason, but ended up in kind of a mess, basically. And also was done under false pretenses. So keep in mind when people are talking to you about changing or dissolving or trying something new, have your radar up for people, especially governments, misleading you. Not because they're evil, they actually have good intentions in mind, but because the, there'll always be some kind of hidden agenda or some kind of behind the scenes activity. And Sun Rahu conjunctions won't hesitate to lie to get their own way. And they'll also be a little bit pompous and a little bit arrogant. So you have Jupiter moving into Pisces, which is actually more of a patriotic sign than Aquarius is. Aquarius is more of a humanistic sign. And heading towards our friend Cancer, which is Jupiter's exaltation sign. So I'm not expecting any kind of like major outbreak over the next few weeks. We'll be tempted. The United States and other countries will be tempted to do it, but I think it'll be this conflict in Ukraine will go on for about. I hope it ends soon. I mean, to be honest, I'm hoping I'm wrong about this. I'm hoping it ends soon. But also, I think what's happening is there are certain countervailing planetary measures which are going to stretch it out for a year, if not the actual conflict, then consequences connected with the conflict. The other thing is, since K2's in Libra, the markets, not necessarily the stock market, but economies are going to be in kind of a state of flux and basically recovering and trying to get themselves stabilized. And that'll take about a good year and a half. Saturn is right now is aspecting the sun, so it's restraining the government a little bit. And Saturn will be aspecting Jupiter, so it'll restrain change or the need for change or the need to get out of conventional relationships. But almost any relationship will feel a little bit stretched or a little bit difficult during this particular transit. The other thing to keep in mind is Mars and Venus are still kind of close together. And it's unusual to see Mars chasing Venus for this longer period of time. Usually Venus pulls away pretty quickly. But on the positive side, there is a nice conjunction on May 1st between Jupiter and Venus. This will open doors for peace and prosperity. This will open doors for spiritual study. This will open doors for financial success or financial compromise. So I think I can be guardedly optimistic that May 1st may prove to be a really interesting day for people. But again, I'm going to encourage people between April 15th and May 15th, be very careful what you believe from anybody. And it's not to make you paranoid. It's not to make you distrustful to people. It's just that people will feel compelled, will feel a lot of people, especially governments, will feel a need to lie in order to get what they want. I'm just being straightforward with you. So this is going to be kind of a challenging month. Between May 15th and June 15th will be challenging. And the next, I would say, 9 to 10 months will be challenging just because Saturn is still in that, in this sign. And it's not really a good, it's Capricorn is an okay sign if you're interested in accumulating wealth and accumulating money and all those other things. Mars in Capricorn is good for real estate. That's why we've seen such a, that's one of the reasons we've seen such a real estate boom, is Saturn in Capricorn gives an idea of scarcity and opportunity. But you probably see the real estate market peak around April 6th with this Mars Saturn conjunction. And as Mars passes Saturn, then you'll start to probably see the real estate market tend to slow down a lot. So let's look and see where certain events are taking place. But again, as I said in several broadcasts, no real slowing down of inflation, not really until I would say early 2023. And even then, I think you'll start to see markets, or I think you'll start to see economies kind of wobbly. So let me do this. Well, and when I'm saying markets, I'm not just referring to stock markets. I'm talking about the markets that affect you and me as ordinary people, the places we buy food. So let's, the place we buy food, the place we consume things, those kinds of things. So let me go to oh, this is so tough. Why is it so tough today? Okay. All right. All right. So from the chart, we have some potential anger or conflict in, let me start to the far, far west. So this is Hawaii, and this is, so you have Mercury and Jupiter over Hawaii. That looks pretty good. Hawaii looks like it's doing okay, except for some price inflation. Sun is passing close by there, so the sun will make it. The sun won't intervene in Hawaii that much. We do have a Rahu line really not interacting with anything over here, so that's actually a good thing. You want to see things like that in the map, but it is coming awfully close and is crossing over this Mars Venus line and close to a Saturn line over here. So there's some interaction between Rahu, Mars, Venus, and Saturn. So that tends to mean some difficulty in the economy, some potential for earth changes, or I don't want to say earth changes because that sounds apocalyptic, for climate catastrophes like earthquakes or fires or things like that, or flooding. And this is really strong in the Western United States, especially in Oregon and Washington, somewhat strong in California, and strong again in Montana, all the way down to Baja, the Baja Peninsula in Mexico. The other thing here is there are no lines here. There's a Jupiter-Mercury line going through Wisconsin and Michigan, and all the way down through Louisiana and Mississippi. And those will be good for financial growth, but it'll also be some kind of inflationary pressure happening in that area. The sun is passing through close to Washington, D.C., so essentially the government's immobilized right now, or kind of stuck where it is. That's not a surprise, but the government's also stuck in Panama, Western South America, all the way down to Ecuador, and even touching a little bit on Chile. Brazil, there are no lines going through Brazil right now, which is a kind of a relief. The only line that's close to it is a Venus line, which is Venus and Mars line, which again indicates some struggle over food, especially in the Azores and the Canaries, and maybe Eastern Brazil. The other lines we want to look at are essentially we have Mercury and Jupiter passing through England. Again, inflationary pressure and passing through Spain. That's also inflationary pressure. And all the way down to Little Gabon and probably parts of Western Africa. We have, I have to look at this a little more carefully, a descendant sun line passing through Sweden and Denmark and Germany and Italy. And you're going to see the government take tighter control over those parts of the world. So the government's going to seem like very strong and very domineering. That'll cause some problems for them come May through June. The other situation, we don't have any alliance going through Turkey like I saw the other day, so that's good. It doesn't mean Turkey's problem free. It's hemmed in between the sun and Rahu and Mars and Venus and Rahu. So there'll probably be some kind of climatic issues there, and also some kind of governmental issues there, but not as severe as the ones I saw on Sunday. And over here, this part of the world, this is Russia, and Russia still wants to grab the Ukraine. It still wants to dominate the Ukraine, get it to do exactly what Russia wants it to do. So I think we're, like I said, I'm guardedly optimistic we'll see some kind of resolution of the conflict over the next few weeks, or maybe even a ceasefire over the next few weeks. But I don't think this is going to be one of those situations which will be resolved overnight. I'm hoping I'm wrong, and I'm hoping they get it cleaned up nice and tidy over the next few weeks. But I think pretty much it's easier to be a pessimist in world politics than to be an optimist. And I lean towards optimism. Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed that with me before, but I lean towards optimism. And this will be kind of a intermittent but kind of a grueling war over the next year or so. And I can't really tell right now who's going to come out on top or who's going to get more of what they want. The Ukraine was a non-combatant. Basically, they were invaded, and Russia has certain conditions it wants met. But like as I said before, I don't think it's very reasonable to ask for conditions to be met. That's sort of what a thug does, you know. So a person is holding somebody for ransom yeah, until he can get a helicopter and safe passage to another country. So this Rahu line will tend to make Russia a little crazy, kind of demanding, but it'll also introduce a certain amount of stubbornness into Ukraine. And also, we do have Rahu lines involved with India and China. And again, I'm seeing some sort of a small conflict or some kind of a struggle between these two countries. That's worrisome because they're both nuclear powers, although India is not quite as far as I know, isn't quite as militarized as China is. I could be wrong about that. And all the way, so this looks like border disputes to me up here, right in this region. Also, you have Rahu passing through Afghanistan and Pakistan. So I think, I'm sorry, not Rahu, Saturn passing. So that government will become much more oppressive or much more dictatorial, those governments. Um, so the country that I'm kind of worried about right now is India because it's sort of like between these two malefic lines. It's between these two difficult lines right here, or and so you have waning moon on one side and Rahu on the other. So that'll cause some anxiety or some uncertainty in India. Um, the other part will be essentially will be these lines will affect will be Eastern Russia, um, but not really much else. Um, Also, you have Jupiter and Mercury passing over what used to be uh, Burma in, uh, in parts of um, East Pakistan, or East Pakistan. And yeah, so there'll be some increased government control, but increased economic problems there. And these are the spots where I'm seeing enhanced economic problems, where I'm expecting there to be some violence against the government. Jupiter and Mercury are passing over the rest of Southeast Asia, uh, and it will introduce some increased um, happiness in China, and also the government will crack down more strongly in China over the next few weeks. And finally, we have a large cluster of planets over Australia: Mars, Venus, Saturn. So this actually is not bad for Australia. There are no planets intersecting Japan, but it is still prone to earthquakes. And the other part of the world where and there's some likelihood of panic over there. And the other part of the world that I haven't looked at is New Zealand. New Zealand has essentially really good lines in the chart. Um, it's New Zealand is basically under the influence of Jupiter and Mercury line, and I think we'll see more inflationary pressure on that economy. So here, 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 and here, also here, and finally, and that's about it. Those are the spots I see for strong inflationary pressure. Doesn't mean the rest of the world won't be affected by it. They certainly will, but those are the areas which will be hardest hit. All right, so let's go back to the main screen and we'll talk about how the planets affect you. And let's see now. Okay, so Aries, as I've said before, Aries is in a state of constant dissatisfaction with itself right now. So you'll see them going to the gym more, or trying to go to the gym more. And K2 is in the seventh house, so relationship partners will seem cold or distant, a little bit difficult to deal with. And also fairly obsessed with their career and fairly obsessed with the home. The other planet, the other significant part of this is, as before, Aries has really strong career potential from this chart, but is being delayed or obstructed because of Saturn's presence in the ninth house. That won't delay it or obstruct it for very long. It'll actually help it in the long run. So financial issues are kind of a thing of the past for Aries, at least right now, and it'll be more focused on career life. For Taurus has Sun in the 11th house. That's a relatively good placement. It tends to give gains from home life, gains from family members, and also from the chart, Mercury and Jupiter are placed in the ninth house, or placed in the 10th house, which is very good for career life, especially teaching career. And Venus, Saturn, and Mars are in the ninth house. So this means this sign will have to go through a lot of ropes or go through a lot of hurdles to get what it wants. Moon is in the seventh house. If Moon is in the seventh house, the person has problems with relationship partner, or relationship partner will be moody or difficult to adjust to. K2 is in the sixth house in this chart, so you have to watch out for illnesses, unexpected illnesses. And Mars is located in the ninth house, 10th house, and 11th house. So again, good for financial gains for this sign. Gemini has its Lord in the ninth house, so actually it's experiencing a fairly lucky time right now. This will be especially true after around April, after around March. I'm sorry, around April 1st, excuse me. And we'll see it start to gain prominence and acceptance. The other thing is, you'll still have Saturn in the eighth house, so relationship life will be a little bit damaged. You'll still have, but Jupiter in that house will give more relationship options or more relationship opportunities. Sun in the 10th house will give the sign a certain amount of fame. So that's considered a good thing. From the chart, Cancer has three planets in the seventh house. So I told you about this before. It's not good when planets bounce to one side of a chart. And that'll give relationship pressure or unrealistic expectations for relationship partners, or just illness to relationship partners. So, and also bad tempers, so it'll be easier to fight. So this will be true for sun sign, rising sign, moon sign. Jupiter and Mercury are in the eighth house. The sign will look kind of attractive to the opposite sex, or to however they want to position themselves on the fluidity spectrum. And Sun is in the ninth house, which is good for financial gain. So the Lord of the first is in the fifth house. It's kind of depressed, but also very intelligent right now. So it's actually enjoying a period in which its insight is really, really good. But there's a tendency to get too depressed or too hopeless with this combination. So you have to be careful to watch that in terms of mood for those of you born under Cancer. For Leo has Jupiter and Mercury in the seventh house. That's not a bad sign placement at all. And overall, this will give new opportunities for us to meet relationship partners, and especially younger relationship partners. But you'll also end up spending quite a bit of money on them, but also gaining money from them. And you have Saturn, Mars, and Venus in the sixth house. That'll give some problems with health matters and with property matters. Sun is in the eighth house. So again, this sign seems attractive. It seems kind of mysterious or kind of forbidden. Okay, so that's interesting for those of you who have Leo suns or Leo lagnas or Leo rising signs or Leo moons. And overall, Leo, though, looks like it has a relatively good month, although it'll be worrying a lot. For Virgo has moon in Scorpio, so the energy level tends to go down with this sign. It doesn't feel like it has any friends. K2's in the second house. It's going to be very critical or very sharp or dismissive to a lot of people around it, kind of angry. It is good for insight. I mean, so that's one good thing about it, and especially good for financial insight. But it's a little bit of a difficult month between now and the end of the month for the sign, basically because the person's moods will be more towards the depression end of things. Um, Venus and Saturn and Mars are in the fifth house, gives hardworking children, or else good luck through hard work. Sixth house has Jupiter and Mercury in it. This is not a bad placement, although you'll get criticized by people who know more, or just by people who like to gossip. Sun's in the seventh house, a lot of intensity connected with relationship life, and Rahu in the eighth house, relationship partners seem very difficult to please. For a Libra, K2 in Libra, Rahu in Aries. For Libra, this is kind of an interesting time. There'll be a lot of worry about career over the next couple of weeks, maybe even some danger to career between April 15th and May 15th, but also unexpected opportunities start coming up or start showing up career-wise as well. The other thing to keep in mind is Moon is in the second house, so there's a lot of worry about money, a lot of worry about financial stability. Saturn, Mars, and Venus are in the fourth house. So even though projects connected with the home and education are moving forward, there are just these delays, and there will be these delays for the next month or so. You have Mercury and Jupiter in the fifth house. They'll give romantic involvements with younger people, smarter people. Again, people will spend your money. But basically, this is not a bad, you'll actually learn a lot during this particular conjunction. For the sun's in the sixth house, some health issues, the person may feel a little bit tired or a little bit overstretched or a little bit stretched too thin. Rahu in the seventh house, there'll be a strong desire or craving for different kind of relationships. So that doesn't mean the sign will act on them, but there's a lot of temptation out there for this sign over the next year and a half. For Scorpio has the moon in it. It's the lord of the ninth house and the first house. So there's a lot of active growth, a lot of learning, a lot of speaking, a lot of teaching going on. For Venus and Mars and Saturn in the third house, a lot of ambition and a lot of drive. Jupiter and Mercury are in the fourth house. That gives essentially good educational status, good educational gains. And Sun being in the fifth house is considered very good for financial growth for this chart. So it looks like a good career month for this particular sign. The other planets aren't that dominant in the sign. Rahu is in the seventh house. So we've said before, relationship partners will seem very difficult to please, or they'll seem like they're having a lot of problems. And that's about it for this sign. This sign is everything's between on this side of the Libra axis. Okay, so essentially all the planets are moving towards K2 right now, and K2 is also what they call stationary direct, which I had mentioned before. So that's when essentially things stand still and they take a turn in either a good or a bad direction. I'm hoping it'll take a turn in a good direction. That's what I'm optimistic about. For Sagittarius is Jupiter is in the third house, gives the sign good speech, good ability, good public image. Venus, Mars, and Saturn are in the second house, so there is continuous worry about financial success or prosperity. Mercury and Jupiter, okay, Sun is in the fourth house. And so it's the ninth house Lord in the fourth house. So that's a good combination. It's considered very good for financial success. Rahu's in the fifth house, so it'll give somewhat greedy kids. We've already mentioned this several weeks in a row. And the rest of the chart, K2's in the 12th, so that is actually good for spiritual growth or spiritual happiness. So that's not a bad combination. For let's see now. Let me fix something. For Capricorn, Capricorn has this very strong authoritarian bent to it. It's what I've seen. Saturn's aspecting the sun, so it'll make governments more restrictive around the world, not less so. And I think, at least from this chart, we'll take a break from that for a couple of months. Something will happen, then we'll go back to essentially what I would call a fearing financial solidity position. Um, Jupiter and Mercury in the second house, good time for earning money. Sun's in the third house, good time for taking chances. Rahu's in the fourth. Makes a person feel kind of isolated or kind of different if they have that particular sign placement. And Moon is in the 11th house, so even though the means by which money is being made aren't necessarily the best means, and I'm not even telling you to do anything illegal from this combination. But essentially, money is very strong in this chart. It's good for financial growth. And it's especially good in this particular chart. Okay, so there should be a lot of financial growth. Relationship life, not so much, not really until mid-April, if I'm being, or early April, if I'm being truthfully, about 3 days from now. Okay, for our friend Aquarius, Aquarius has Jupiter and Mercury in the first house. It's smart as a whip right now. Now that's not a forever thing. That's just right now. But this particular planetary combination does have a certain significance in the mythology, and it is a sign of intelligence. So that looks pretty good. Sun is in the second house as Lord of the seventh house, so it indicates money from spouse, but there'll be a lot of expenditures because of all these planets in the 12th house. And Moon is in the 10th house, so again, worry about career. K2 is in the 9th house, so you'll have bosses who are a little bit indifferent or a little bit difficult to please. Now for Pisces, Pisces Lord is in the 12th house, so again, it gives heavy expenditures. Saturn aspecting the sun gives heavy sense of responsibility, but there'll be financial gains connected with it. And if we look over to where the rest of the chart is balanced, you'll see that essentially K2 is placed in the 8th house, so it's going to give a lot of research into metaphysical phenomena. Moon is in the 9th house, not badly placed, it's debilitated, but there are a couple of cancellations of debilitation because the Lord is in an exalted sign. So this will give generally good luck with local government and generally good luck with trade. And finally, all these planets in the 12th house, which I mentioned before, they'll give a lot of expenditures for the sign, at least for another month and a half, and then again from the summer until January of 2023. So that's it for this week. I hope everything recorded well, and I'll see you next week. And I love you all. And namaste. But remember to take care of yourself. Don't listen to negative people unless you can process that and make it positive for yourself. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot. Again, like I said, I love you all, and see you next week.